encouraging, educating, and empowering you into action. This is Warriors Talk with your host, Lady ReShell.
Hello. Welcome to Warriors Talk with author and founder Lady ReShell, where we move away from awareness towards action. It's Health and Wellness Monday, and our topic for today is what Black women should know about heart disease. We are live on Intellectual Radio. We just heard from the Drive F5 with Roman. Keep it locked right here on Intellectual Radio and allow us to feed your brain. On the last episode of Warriors Talk, I spoke about managing breast cancer as a single parent. You can head over to YouTube and type in Intellectual Radio. Stay connected for any episodes you may have missed. The quote of the day is, "It's not diabetes, heart disease, or obesity that runs in your family. It's that no one runs in your family." And that quote is by Tony Robbins. Here is your trending topic for today, and it's coming from Chicago WLS, and it's talking about two teenagers who were sentenced to 30 years in jail for robbery. And we know that it's been a lot of carjackings going on with our youth. I'm not even sure what's going on with the youth and why they feel like they have the right to take other people's property. But according to Chicago WLS, two men charged in a violent 2021 attempt carjacking that ended with the death of a veteran. They pled guilty and they have been sentenced. Deshaun Williams, at the time he was 17 years old when the incident occurred. He is now 19 and he pled guilty to aggravated robbery with a firearm. And he was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Frank Harris, who was 18 at the time of the crime, he's now 21. He pled guilty in January for an exchange of 30 years as well. Police officers said Williams and Harris was responsible for beating that led to Keith Cooper's death. He was a Marine veteran to his core, and his family said that he had already planned out his final arrangements before this day even took place. His daughter went back to the place where he was last seen alive to celebrate his life. She ran to the Hyde Park shopping center where her father was essentially beaten to death by two teenagers trying to steal his SUV, according to police. Harris was initially charged with murder and hijacking, and Williams was charged with first-degree murder in Cooper's death. His daughter said that she was grateful that the justice system is moving forward. Keep that family in your prayers because we know that the carjackings are still happening. If you are tuned in on any form of social media, like the show, share the show, invite someone else in on the show that you feel may benefit from this valuable information. I'm so excited for our guest today. She's not a stranger to Warriors Talk. Joining us from social media, she's live. She is our healthy solution expert. And she's been in the business as a physician for 20 years plus, I want to say. And she's impacting lives every single day. We have Michelle Meeks, aka Doc Michelle. Hey, Michelle.
Hello. How are you today?
I'm excited. This topic, Doc Michelle, is a scary topic, but I know it's needed. So today we are sounding the alarm on Black women, and I'm hoping that they are listening.
Yes, a very, very important topic. And as you know, close to my heart. My mother passed away from heart disease in 2022. So I'm all about, educating everyone, including our communities, on what we can do, how we can recognize signs, symptoms, prevention, all of that.
Yes. So when I was doing a little research on this subject, I thought to myself, why are more women not alarmed, or why we're not alarmed about this subject when it is the number one killer for men and women? And I know we hear about cancer all the time, and it may seem like cancer is because we hear it all the time. And I really don't think heart disease get enough like airplay or enough awareness going around. I think cancer kind of overshadows it. But heart disease is the number one killer for men and women, and especially African American women. That is the
Yeah,
number one killer for us. So we
yeah.
should be alarmed.
Yeah, and you're right, right? It doesn't get as much of airtime sometimes as cancer. Both are horrible, both, can, end our lives. And I think part of it is we think of heart disease more so as caused by things we've done to ourselves. So sometimes it may not get as much sympathy as something like cancer. But 50% of Black women, according to the American Heart Association, have heart disease, right? Only 1 in 20% of us think we do, okay? But 1 in 5 deaths occur from heart disease in women. It's 1 in 4 in men. And we tend to die at a younger age compared to our white counterparts, right? And so it's important to understand that we too are at risk, that there are things that we can do to prevent, to understand that, heart disease starts when we're young, in our 20s. We start to develop plaques in our arteries. We don't have symptoms from it, men or women, but then we have the symptoms later in life. So we tend to think of it as an old person's disease. But heart diseases comes in many sort of forms and types, right? We think about the blockages, coronary artery disease, when you build up plaques in your arteries that then can lead to blockages and then can lead to angina, chest pain, or heart attacks. Then you're talking about arrhythmias. There's heart arrhythmias like irregular heart rate, atrial fibrillation, which my mother had as well, that irregular heartbeat, and can cause symptoms such as shortness of breath. It can lead to heart failure, another type of heart disease, right? Heart failure, where my heart is just not pumping effectively, which can lead to shortness of breath and other symptoms such as fatigue and chest pain, all of which can lead to heart attacks and death if not well controlled. So, heart disease is sort of that big term that encompasses all of those things, from problems with the valves of our heart to the structure of the heart to blockages to how well the heart is pumping. And one of the things that leads to heart disease, we always talk about, is high blood pressure, right? And so the only way to know if you have high blood pressure is to check your blood pressure, because we call high blood pressure what? The silent killer. You have no symptoms until it's too late and you have symptoms: heart attacks, strokes, or death.
That's a lot under that umbrella when you think about heart disease, because I think a lot of people may relate it to heart attack. Well, nobody in my family has had a heart attack. Nobody, you think about that, but underneath that umbrella is so many different things that we need to be worried about. But if we go to the doctor, know your numbers, and then the doctor can, if you have that issue, the doctor can set up some type of plan for you to make sure that you have a healthy heart and you're thinking smart with your daily choices.
Yeah, we talk about that know your numbers a lot, right? There's a lot of numbers in that. One is your high blood pressure, right? So your blood pressure should be less than 130 over 80. People think, oh, it's 130 over 80. That's still good, but that's still considered high blood pressure. When you get higher than that, then you're talking moderate or severe high blood pressure. So you want to know your numbers, because there's a lot of things that you can do to keep your blood pressure normal. We talk about exercise all the time. We talk about lowering your stress, right? We talk about not smoking and all those things that I'm sure we'll discuss even more. But knowing your blood pressure, very important. Knowing your cholesterol, very important, right? Because it's that cholesterol that causes the little plaque buildup in our arteries that over time can lead to issues. And so none of this happens just like that, right? It's over years and years that things occur that we don't treat that then leads to the symptomatic issues. So know what your cholesterol is, your bad cholesterol and your good cholesterol, right? There's some cholesterol that's good for our bodies, which is the HDL. I always, when I try to explain cholesterol to patients, I say your HDL should be high, H high, right? And your bad cholesterol should be low, which is the LDL, right? So you want to know those numbers and ask your doctor, what was my last cholesterol numbers? And not just the total, but what's the good, what's the bad? The bad cholesterol, we can do a lot to affect that by eating the right foods, making sure we're not eating a lot of fried foods, things like that. But your good cholesterol, the best way to raise your good cholesterol is exercise, not smoking, and eating the good fats, right? Your olive oils and things like that. Smoking and drinking too much, another risk factor for heart disease, right? So smoking, people they think lung disease, but also important for heart disease, because every time we smoke, we cause inflammation in the blood vessels, which can cause problems with blood flow. With alcohol also causes inflammation in the blood vessels, but it also does another thing, which is it affects the heart muscle. We talked about heart failure. And so people who drink a lot of alcohol, we see a lot of times that they have a bigger floppy heart that's not pumping very well, and they get heart failure. And so those are the two things that we, from a lifestyle perspective, can also do to limit your risk of heart disease. And it's never too late to stop or start any of these things, because the minute you change to a healthier lifestyle, that's the time that you give yourself more opportunity to live a longer, healthier life.
I just want to acknowledge some of the ladies who are tuning in right now. We have Kenya. Hey, Kenya, Yolanda, and Lisa. Yolanda said that she has high blood pressure. It's controlled, but it's scary.
Yeah, it can be, but I'll tell you, Yolanda, to a couple of things, right? If you've got high blood pressure, if you're taking medications to control it, great, keep taking those medications. But what I want you to also know is that there are things that you can do. I love to tell people, get outside and walk. Finally, the weather is breaking for us here in Illinois. Go outside and walk 30 minutes every day. We know that if you can start walking is great for lowering your blood pressure. If you can do 30 minutes twice a day, great. Whatever you can do. Studies show that a little bit of movement is better than no movement. So even if you can do 10 minutes on your lunch break or something like that, do that. 10 minutes twice a day, 10 minutes 3 times a day. It works great as well.
I think we underestimate really the effects of exercise and what it could do to our body, and not just for heart disease, for cancer, diabetes, all of these other diseases out here that kind of falls under the umbrella of you taking action to do something to minimize your risk. Exercise is one of those things that, man, you can do it at your own pace, in your own space, and you really don't have to pay any money for it. It's free. I always talk about, looking at YouTube videos and exercise that way. If you're afraid to go in the gym and don't want to be around anybody, it's for your own health. Like, just carve out some time to exercise, and you would be amazed at how much better you feel, how much mobile you'll be, and like Dr. Michelle said, how you're contributing to having a healthy, longer life.
Yeah, and that's a good point, ReShell, is that you don't have to spend money to exercise. I say if you live in a house with steps, go up and down the steps for 20 to 30 minutes in your own home, right? Do some floor exercises, do little things to also build muscle and build endurance, and just walking. Actually, I was reading something the other day, and it asked, what's the best exercise to lower your blood pressure? And before, I'm thinking, oh, it's got to be walking. Walking's great, but they actually said Tai Chi, which a lot of us don't do. Tai Chi, the slow movements and all of that. They show that doing that, you have more effect on lowering your blood pressure after you do Tai Chi. But it says something about what we consider exercise. What do we consider beneficial, right? Because I think the thing about Tai Chi is it's about slowing your mind, slowing your breath, relaxing, right? And we always think, well, I've got to run on the treadmill for 30 minutes, or I've got to do all this activity, this big aerobic activity. But we're not saying that you have to do that. We're saying take a yoga. I started yoga. That was my New Year's resolution. I'm doing yoga twice a week to lower my chronic stress level. But little things like that can make a big difference. So it's important to know what you can do and know that it may not be the traditional thing that you think about. It might be something different.
I totally agree with that. A little bit goes a long way. The key is to get started. Yolanda said, okay, she said, thank you. That's true. Thank you. She was talking to you when you answered her question. Kenya said, walking is good for lowering your blood sugar too.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about diabetes, but absolutely, movement will help burn the extra sugar in your system.
I think that some people, one of the scary things is with diabetes, even if you're taking your medicine and doing everything that you're supposed to do, you are still at risk for heart disease.
You are, yeah. But you can certainly lower your risk when you have diabetes by keeping it under control. But keeping your diabetes under control doesn't mean that you've eliminated your heart disease risk, right? It just means that if your diabetes is uncontrolled, you're increasing your risk of heart issues. And so I can't stress that enough. And even the medications that we have now for diabetes, they've done studies with them that show that they also help your heart disease. So if your doctor has prescribed you diabetic medications, you might want to ask them, is this one of those medicines that they also studied that said it can help heart disease too? Because maybe you're on that, and that might even give you more motivation to take it consistently.
Which would make sense if you know that they're at risk for it. There should be something that I would think they would have some type of medicine that would work in conjunction with that. It makes sense.
Exactly right.
Dawn says, I have irregularities in her upper chamber, SVT, and doctors suggest what's that, ablations?
Ablation.
She said, are you a fan of that procedure?
Yeah. So a heart ablation is basically when you have SVT, it means that the electrical current in your heart is not acting normally. So sometimes you might have an irregular heartbeat or something like that. And so I encourage her to have those discussions with her provider about what's the best option. But ablation basically sort of means that that pathway that's going sort of crazy, we try to stop it, right, from doing that. It's one of the main treatments for SVT that she is describing. But I want to be sure to let her know to talk to her provider. And if you have questions about what they're telling you, get a second opinion. Nothing wrong with that. Talk to another cardiologist to see if they're giving you the same sort of treatment plan, which can give you some comfort to know that, oh, okay, well, I've gotten a second opinion and I'm getting the same advice.
Yolanda said that she's borderline diabetic.
Yeah. And borderline just means that, your numbers are showing that if you don't control it, change your diet, exercise, that you could progress to full diabetes. Sometimes we put patients on medication pre-diabetic, depending on your risk and other things that may be going on. But glad to hear that you made some changes with your diet, and that, sometimes, especially in pre-diabetes, you bring that up, the lifestyle changes and the diet changes make the greatest benefits in the pre-diabetes stages. So if your doctor says you're pre-diabetic, don't think, oh, good, I don't have diabetes, I can keep doing what I'm doing. This is the time to make the changes because you'll get the best benefit from it.
Dawn says, thank you for addressing her question that she had. And then Lisa said, you always provide great information and something to think about. She appreciates you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. I'm appreciative to be in this space to share information that you may not be able to get in this way somewhere else. So.
Absolutely. You already know how I feel about you. That's why you're on here every single month dropping
Yeah.
gems. I wanted to talk about some of the symptoms that women may feel when it comes to heart disease or a heart attack, because we know that men and women are two different species. So our
Mm.
symptoms may or may not be the same.
Yes, and it's very interesting. I'm going to go back to my mother who had high blood pressure for years and would never say she had chest pain. She would always say she had like heartburn or, it was hurting over there, but it was never chest pain. And what we know about women is that sometimes we don't have the classic chest pain. We might have nausea and vomiting. We might have heartburn type symptoms. We might get neck pain or jaw pain. It just may not show itself in the same way. And that's why you'll always hear me say, if you're having some symptoms that are just different, not what is common for you, get that checked out. Especially if you're having stomach pain or nausea or some back pain, jaw pain that's not getting relieved with Tylenol or your normal medication routine, right? You want to check that out. Shortness of breath and fatigue is clear, right? Because if your heart is not getting enough blood supply, and it's not able to pump the blood to the rest of your body effectively, you're going to get short of breath, you're going to get fatigued, you're going to get lightheaded and dizzy. And so for women, it can present as all these things, which can make it kind of like, well, how do I know, right? That this is that and not something else. And that's why I always will talk to patients about if something is different than your usual pain or your usual symptoms you have with your heartburn, right? If this is different, we need to know about that, right? You want to tell your doctor about that because, yeah, we may all have heartburn. We might take something for it and yeah, it goes away. But if it's not, if it feels different, you need to let your physician know about that.
One of the things that were really surprising to me was the vertigo.
Yeah. And you don't think about it, but it comes from a couple of reasons, right? If you have heart disease and first your heart is not pumping the blood effectively, or you're trying to do something which is more taxing and your heart can't keep up with the demand, right? Now the blood's not going to your brain, to your circulatory system, and you will feel kind of dizzy. Things will start to spin and people will say, oh, I just need to sit down for a minute, right? But it could be something more. And that's when you need to understand what your risk is, right? Have you been told you have heart disease? Do you have diabetes? Are you a smoker and you're obese? If you have all those things going on and, oh, I just feel a little lightheaded, that's more serious, right? Than if I'm a healthy person, I think I'm a healthy person and I don't smoke and I don't have all these other risk factors. What else is going on? Why do you feel dizzy? Why is the room spinning? So we try to put all that in the right context when we're evaluating a patient. But my go-to is if it's different, we need to know about it.
We need to address it. I wanted to, you were right on point for what I wanted to talk about next. And it's how do we recognize the importance of mental health and how does stress impact our heart health?
Yes. So we know chronic stress is a big factor for heart disease for a number of reasons, right? Chronic stress could be, if I on an everyday basis, I'm in traffic every day for an hour and that stresses me out. Maybe I'm a caregiver, and I'm taking care of my elderly mother and my young children and I'm working, right? And that's a stress all the time. And we know those stresses can lead to high blood pressure, which, as we know, leads to heart disease if left uncontrolled. And so it's important to address the chronic stress because we tend to push that aside. Like, that's fine, I'm going to manage it. Is what I got to do, especially as women. We do that a lot, right? We put on all the hats, and we just keep going. But I want to stop and say, even though we have those stresses in our lives, these things, right? We know that stress is our response to things in our environment, right? Because we could drive to work every day and not get as stressed about it if we put on some jazz, put on some music, right? Your response to being in traffic for an hour every day is different, right? So we have to look at how we recognize that and where do we put it in our lives, in compartmentalize it. And that's why I started to do yoga, right? Because for me, I'm like, I could do aerobics every day, but it's taking that minute, that hour to say, I'm going to stop moving. I'm going to do some deep breaths. I'm going to relax my system because we're always on adrenaline and we're going and we're going. And it's that adrenaline that that's the actual chemical that can lead to high blood pressure in our system. So we have to relax. We have to deal with the mental stresses, the chronic stress. If you're depressed, anxious, all of those things raise the adrenaline in our system, raise the cortisol in our system, and all of that leads to high blood pressure in our system. So the stress matters. We've got to address that piece.
I totally agree with you about that. Let it go. Let it
Let it
go.
go, right?
Yes. Lisa said it was the vertigo that prompted us that my mom was having a stroke. She downplayed it for hours, but it was a stroke.
Isn't that something?
Wow.
Yeah. If that was different for her, and our moms would be, oh, fine. I'm just gonna sit down for a minute, right? But we know, no, that's not right, mom. Let's get that checked out, especially for something like that. It's go to the emergency room immediately.
Yes, Yolanda says she has been short-winded. She's been diagnosed with COPD, and she never smoked a day in her life.
Very interesting. And COPD, a lung disorder, and that's another topic. We could talk about COPD because you can get COPD if you've never smoked, but did you live in a house with smokers? Did you work around chemicals and factories? I had a couple of patients who never smoked, but worked as mechanics in car places and just was inhaling lots of chemicals all day, and they were diagnosed with COPD. So we have to look at all of that too.
She said it's hard to walk distance without having to stop.
Yeah, yeah. And COPD is a difficult diagnosis to reverse, but I would definitely say talk to your provider about that COPD symptoms because we do have lots of treatments and inhalers and things that can help make that better, so that your quality of life is better.
Wow. Tracy says she has a
Oh,
LBBB.
that I think Tracy is saying left bundle branch block, which is a heart condition about how the electrical current is moving through the heart as well. Sometimes that is not a big deal unless it's causing issues for you, symptoms, depending on the severity of it and other things that go along with that and how your heart is functioning. So hopefully, I think that was Tracy, is also getting that managed and monitored by her cardiologist.
Wow. Tracy says yes, and Yolanda says thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. I want to take a quick break. I hope that you guys are enjoying this conversation. With Doc Michelle, we are talking about Black women and heart disease and how important it is to take care of your health and to know your risks and to make sure that you are doing something about it. Warriors Talk is all about moving from awareness towards taking action. So I hope that you all are listening and that you plan to take action with what you know. I want to highlight it is our community spotlight time so that we can highlight our community spotlight person. Better Sister and Brother Growth Network. They celebrated 10 years as of last year, that is. And they are having a stand together for a cause for domestic violence and breast cancer awareness. And Yolanda is the domestic violence honoree, and I am the breast cancer honoree. You can go to their Facebook page. for more information on how to assist them and how they help individuals in the community. And you can also go to Eventbrite so that you can purchase your ticket for the up and coming event. Again, we are live on Intellectual Radio talking about what Black women should know about heart disease, which is the number one killer for men and women.
Yes,
I know y'all
yes.
thought it was cancer, but it's not. It's heart disease. So there's
Heart
another,
disease.
yes, another monster that we have to worry about, making sure that we're staying on top of our health. Tracy said 52% heart function.
Okay.
Now I'm wondering, Dr. Michelle, because I had an individual on the show that 10 years after her treatment from cancer, she found out that she had, she had to get heart surgery. She had to get a heart, and it came from treatment.
Yeah.
So I know it can come from maybe medication, treatment, and genetics, your lifestyle. And in Tracy's case, I'm just wondering if it had anything to do with treatment, because sometimes it may not happen right away.
Absolutely true. And we've got great cancer medicines, but we know that some of those medicines can affect the heart and the heart function. And so for many women who are getting certain medications, they get an echocardiogram and EKGs intermittently during treatment, because it can affect your heart function. Sometimes if it's caught quick enough, right, the oncologist will change the medication if possible, and try not to put you on that or give you a break from the medication. But it's not an easy decision, right? Because you've got cancer, and now we need to give you this medicine that may cause heart disease, and we know that. And so a lot of education and conversation and communication has to be done between the doctor and the patient.
Yes. I know we talked about the lifestyle modifications on how to decrease your risk of heart disease. And we touched on the mental aspect of it, letting go when it comes to stress, and some of the warning signs to look for if you're dealing with diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, if you're overweight. Some of those things, obesity, if you're drinking, you're smoking. Doc Michelle, can you provide any type of guidance on navigating healthcare disparities to ensure that Black women receive the attention that they need? And maybe because the numbers aren't going down right now when it comes to heart disease at this moment. Like, what else can we do?
Yeah. So the health disparities are there for a number of reasons, right? Because we started out saying that 50% of Black women have heart disease. We're more likely to die from the heart disease compared to our counterparts. And part of that is infrastructural disparities, such as I live in a community where I may not be able to get the healthier foods. Maybe those healthier foods cost more. Maybe I live in a community where I don't feel safe walking outside, so I can't really get the exercise I need because I can't afford to go to a gym, right? These structural health inequities and the socioeconomic status that causes that to happen, right? And then the lack of access to providers, perhaps in their communities, that are able to treat, because we know that there are not enough doctors to treat all the patients, right? But so the access is an issue too. So we have to have to sort of be advocates for ourselves. But as you're putting up here, right, it's the socioeconomic, I can't afford, it's not in my community. It's the environmental things as well, as far as do I live in a walkable community? Are things available to me that I need in order to live that healthy lifestyle? What things are promoted in our communities versus other communities. And so that's why your show is so important, because we've got to get the information out to our communities to help decrease the health inequities that we're seeing, right? And because we know education is part of the solution, along with all the other sort of changes that need to happen with structural racism and inequities in our communities, right? That's another issue. But we have other communities, other corporations in the communities that provide space for us, right, to be healthy. Sometimes they're grocery stores that open up right in our communities, or the little gardens where people are making their own fruits and vegetables. So we have to be sort of creative about how we get the information and how we support those communities that really need it. And part of it is certainly education and advocating for yourself. I'm always saying that when you go to the doctor, take someone with you, especially if you feel like you don't know what to say, don't know the right questions to ask, right? It's always good to have that other person, that other ear there to get the same information, to ask the questions that you may not think about. And that's key too.
I totally agree. There are some programs in our community that sometimes we may not know about, or we know about them and we don't want to take advantage of them because we maybe feel like, I don't want that. At my clinic where I take my girls to the doctor, they have this program where they give out fresh fruits and vegetables every week. And all you have to do is just pick them up.
Exactly.
And they're fresh and you can cook with them. They give you recipes on, how to cook things to be healthier, make healthier choices, and it's free. You just pick up a box and go home and cook. And they are providing it every single week because they know in our communities that there's a food desert when it comes to healthier selections for us. So you may want to think about asking your doctor, do they have that program there? Can they think about getting a program there? Is it one close by where you can go and, to a different neighborhood and pick it up? But there are programs out there that can help us make healthier choices. We have to, like you said, be an advocate for ourselves, ask and find out where these programs are.
Yeah, and that is a great point because I know the Chicago Food Depository, the Greater Food Depository, they do have relationships with different community organizations to do things just like that. Because we know more now than we did a long time ago, perhaps, and we're now just bringing it to the forefront that food is medicine, right? But we talk about there's an organization called Food as Medicine, but food is medicine. And so if we start to treat it as such and make sure that not only are we writing you a prescription, right, but like your doctor's office, we're also going to provide you with healthy options and give it to you, right, to start, right? Sometimes we just have to make it easy, just give it to you to start doing things differently. I really commend that. That's great.
Yeah. Yolanda is located on Austin and Oak Park and I want to say Lake Street. It's like right there in that area where my girls go to the doctor, where I pick up the fruits and vegetables. It's on Chicago Avenue. I want to say the 50 something 100 block of Chicago Avenue. And yeah, I mean, it's free. And the box is not a small box. And it's like every week. And some of the stuff I'm giving it to my mom because I'm like, this is a lot. Like, it's so much that I can't really, cook it all. And sometimes it's not even a typical fruit that you normally would get at the store. It's like a variety to kind of open you up for trying different types of fruits and vegetables. So that's the one thing that I like about it. Because, we tend to just go to the store and get the same things, but these were totally different ones. And they had the recipes to tell you how to cook with these different fruits and vegetables. Yeah. So
yeah,
I wanted
because we're afraid
ahead.
to try new things because we're like, I'm going to pay money and I might not like it. And then what? So.
That's so true. I try to get my girls to open up all the time. That's so true. I wanted to go back to, we was talking about the heart disease, maybe the cancer treatment may be causing individuals to have heart problems. And Tracy said that COVID definitely is causing an adverse effect.
Yeah, we know that COVID can cause heart issues in certain populations, right? There's in certain folks, we've seen inflammation of the heart muscle. And so the great thing is we have vaccines for COVID, so wonderful. So that if you get COVID now, it's a milder illness. But certainly in the beginning of the pandemic, when folks were getting COVID and there weren't any treatments, we know that we saw that it can cause heart issues, heart disease, inflammation of the heart muscle, if left untreated. So hopefully people are not having long-term sequela from that, but we know there's a subset of people, especially if they had other comorbid conditions anyway, that are having those adverse effects lingering.
Kenya was commenting on the health disparities. She said, "Is there because of lack?"
I'm not sure I understand her question, but the health disparities is because we're lacking these things, right? We're lacking the access, we're lacking sometimes the education, the structural sort of neighborhood to get the things that we need, right? Some of it is if the grocery store is 5-10 miles from your house, right? Transportation there's so many forces that play into the health disparities that we are experiencing. And that's why things like you're saying, where it's where you go, right? It's sort of like when we can provide what is needed where you go anyway, to the doctor's office, and there's food there too, healthy food options. Or when in COVID, the COVID mobile units will come to where you were, because maybe in our community, you couldn't get out the house to go to the pharmacy to get your COVID vaccine, right? So the mobile van would come to your neighborhoods and give you the COVID vaccine. So we have to be creative about how we get the things to the people that need it in order to really be able to decrease heart disease in our communities, right? Because a lot of it is lifestyle. And we talk about the food and exercise is a big piece of that. But we also talked about how do we quit smoking, stop drinking, all the other things that we can do as part of the lifestyle changes.
Yes. Kenya said, Dr. Michelle, we're on the same page due to the lack of diversity. That's why. And in the Black and Brown communities, we have all of these unwanted diseases.
Yeah. A lot of diseases do tend to run in the Black and Brown communities for all the reasons that we've just mentioned. And so programs like this that do the education, programs like the food depository that will bring, foods to the communities, all of that makes a difference. Having safe space for kids to play, for adults to exercise, all of those things make a difference as we try to eliminate these disparities.
Yes, and as you said, it doesn't happen overnight, so we should be starting with our children right now, trying to make these healthier lifestyle changes so that as they grow, they're sticking with those healthy lifestyles.
That's exactly. It starts now with our children. Thanks for bringing that up, right? Because we don't want to wait till that we're 21 to start having these habits. I always say that let your kids see you doing the good things, right? When my kids were younger, I'd make sure I exercised and got on the treadmill. If they just sat there and watched me on the treadmill, sit down while I do this. And now they exercise all the time. But they have to see you doing things and know that that is normal procedure. And that's how we start to make those changes. Start eating healthier, right? Even though when my kids were younger, and I try to give them broccoli and all of that, and they may not want it, but you keep introducing the right things. Eventually, actually, they say that you have to introduce, right, certain foods to your kids 10, 15 times before they might take it. They might never, but don't stop introducing those things. So keep doing those things that will introduce new behaviors for your children. And that's how we can break the cycle.
Yes. Jakina says educating our community is definitely needed. I totally
Mhm.
agree. It really starts with that education. Before you can take any action, you need to know what you need to take action on.
Yes,
And it starts there. And
yes.
you can't just wait for people to educate you. This is your body. This is your one temple. Like Doc Michelle said,
Mhm.
ask questions. Take somebody to the doctor with you. If you don't understand, ask questions.
Yes, yes. And sometimes in our parents and our grandparents, they are like, oh, whatever the doctor says, right? It must be right. And that's why it's important to go with your mom, your grandparents, and listen and advocate for them.
Jakina also said that you are a wealth of information and she would love to definitely connect with you.
Awesome.
Absolutely. I want
Thank
to
you.
get in really quick on some of these myths that come along with heart disease. We know that there are a lot of them out there. And one of them, I'm too young. I'm too young to really worry about heart disease.
Absolutely not, right? We talked about that because heart disease starts in our 20s, and we don't have symptoms till much later. So we want to be sure that, first of all, we know our family history when we're young and that we create those good habits when we're young, so that we don't have to have the symptoms of heart disease when we're older.
Yes. Number two is I know if I had high blood pressure because there would be warning signs. I have no warning signs. So why would I even think I have high blood pressure?
Right, right. Well, we know that high blood pressure is silent. You have no symptoms until it's severe. Then you may have a headache, you might have blurred vision, but we want to catch it before that. High blood pressure is known as the silent killer. You have no symptoms until you have symptoms, right? And at that point, it's too late. It's the effects of the having high blood pressure have already begun in your body. The only way to know is to go to your doctor at least once a year and get your blood pressure checked. And if you have high blood pressure, you should have a blood pressure machine at home so you can check your blood pressure anytime.
Another misconception could be I know when I'm having a heart attack because I'll have chest pains.
Right. Yeah, definitely a myth. We think of a heart attack and chest pain as, oh, that's it, right? If I'm not having chest pain, I'm not having a heart attack. But we talked about that with women that we present in all sorts of different ways: nausea, vomiting, jaw pain, back pain, heartburn. And so, again, important, if anything is different than your usual sort of symptoms, you need to let your provider know.
Heart disease runs in my family, so there's nothing I can do to prevent it.
Yeah. And you talked about this in the beginning too, right? Um, the problem is you can do a lot to prevent it, and we want you to start that young. We talked about what we teach our children, right? And we said heart disease doesn't run in the family, it's no one in the family runs because we are not exercising, we don't have the right habits. And so lots to do to prevent it, but it starts when you're young and it starts with changing those habits.
Yes, I totally agree. Dr. Michelle, thank you so much for always sharing your experience, your knowledge, and your wisdom with us to help us make healthier choices and take action with our health. Um, my final, uh, my final thing with you is I just want you to empower individuals with some advice to share with Black female viewers who may be on their heart healthy journey.
Yes, thank you for having me. And so, again, I just want to say that we as Black women, we are at risk. We know that 50% of African American women can have heart disease in the US, and we may not know it. And so, it's time to advocate for yourselves and do some of those lifestyle changes that maybe you've thought about or have thought about and have not acted upon. We talk about taking action here. So, get active, start moving, start to eat healthier, eat better, and manage your blood pressure. Those are the things. Know your numbers, know your blood pressure, know your cholesterol, know what your BMI, your body mass index is. Are you in the obese or overweight category? And get moving, make those lifestyle changes, start what you can, stop what you can, such as smoking or too much alcohol, And the last piece is important. Lower your stress and get enough sleep.
Oh, I'm working on the sleep part, doctor. That's my downfall is the sleep part. How can individuals stay connected with you if they want to, take this conversation further?
Yeah, so they can find me on Facebook at Dr. Michelle's Healthy Life Solutions or Doc Michelle. We can put it in the chat. Um, I am available for any speaking engagements, any educational talks at your local community organization, churches, things like that. I'm all about getting into the community to empower our community to make changes.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to leave this last comment. Jakina, please make a connection with Doc Michelle. She said she had 3 heart attacks in the last 3 months. So that is alarming, and I already know she's been going to the doctor. Yolanda said, thank you so much. You're awesome. Connect with Doc Michelle, you guys. Again, she's available and she has this information that she is sharing with the community, and she's not even charging you guys for this on this show. Now, she may charge you when she goes somewhere else. But this information you're getting right here is free. Again, Doc, thank you so much, Doc Michelle, for just coming in every month, just educating us to live healthier lives. I appreciate it. You guys, don't go anywhere. I will leave you with these words of wisdom. As the Bible said, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Coming up at 7 p.m. on Intellectual Radio is The People Show with Charles Thomas and Mark Wallace. Join me next Monday right here on Intellectual Radio. As always, thank you for tuning in to Warriors Talk with author and founder Lady ReShell, where we are changing lives one warrior at a time.
Thank you for listening to this week's edition of Warriors Talk with Lady ReShell. To find out more about Warriors Talk, follow at Warriors Talk, the number 1, on all social media outlets, and Warriors Talk with Lady ReShell on YouTube. Please join us next week and every Monday evening at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time on IntellectualRadio.com for Warriors Talk with Lady ReShell, where we encourage, educate, and empower you into action.